What's up, everybody? Welcome on in. Sooners on SI Postgame podcast, and we are locked and loaded here up in the press box well after Oklahoma's 17-13 victory over the Louisiana State Tigers. The Fighting Tigers, as I learned today, is how they officially label themselves on game notes and on the stat broadcast, all that stuff. A chaotic game, a game that punches Oklahoma's ticket effectively to the college football playoff. We're going to get into all of that. For those viewing on YouTube, you can see, hey, we're here, certified fresh, as who's like to say. But I'm going to do this for the audio listeners. I'm Ryan Chapman here. We got John Hoover in the house. John, how was it for you today?
I had an amazing day. I don't ever want to cover a game like that again.
It was chaotic. We got Carson Field in the house. Carson still thawing out a little bit. It wasn't the worst game you've ever covered as far as temperature, but not comfy.
No, not the coldest, but I'm still defrosting a little bit. Thankfully, I brought plenty of layers, hand warmers, so not too bad.
What was the coldest?
The 2023 Armed Forces Bowl, Air Force versus Baylor. Believe it or not, a game in Texas is the coldest game I've ever covered.
Well, we've been to an Armed Forces Bowl or two specifically for Carson, one for me. Those are cool. We got Ryan Aber in the house as well. Aber, good evening, I suppose. Chaos ensues. Never a dull moment on the OUB.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And, can you imagine if you would have told us, say, 5 years ago that we'd be covering this kind of game here in OU, what we would think with the defensive prowess from the Sooners and the, at times, offensive ineptitude, even though the numbers wound up being decent out there, but just a wild regular season finale. And like you said, OU is in the playoff.
Aber you'd be going, why am I still in the press box right now 5 years ago? But that's neither here nor there. We had said it all week long, really since the Alabama win, right, guys? 8 quarters of football, Oklahoma just has to take care of business. They did last week against Missouri, was not pretty by any means. Grimy is what Brent Venables labeled that win, and he loved that and all that stuff. Brent Venables can tell us this was grimy. This was ugly. This was gross. This was a disgusting game of football. And that's okay because Oklahoma found a way. If I had told any of you guys, hey, coming into this, the formula for Oklahoma, what's it been? Take care of the football. John Mateer going to throw 3 touchdowns. 3 interceptions, One of those is going to be returned almost all the way for a touchdown, set LSU up on the +4. Another one's going to set LSU up on the +33. I think we all would have said, well, this is really bad. If I had told you that Oklahoma was going to be without center Jake Bikla because he was going to be in the hospital, is what Brent Venables had told us or confirmed to us with an infection, and that for that Chiwewe was going to slide over, we would have said, that's probably not good. If I had told you that Jaden Ott was taking key snaps at the end of a football game in Red November, we would have said, what is happening here? But, John, all of those things happen. John Mateer, as bad as he was for 3 quarters, able to dust himself off. Really, let's say the fourth quarter plus the last 2 minutes of the third quarter, so we can get that Deion Burks touchdown in there. Able to dust himself off and do enough to reward this Oklahoma defense for another performance. And we got everything today, basically.
We did. We got a lot. This Oklahoma team, here's what we've learned about them this season. They're 10-2. That's really good. Their 2 losses are to 2 ranked teams. That's not bad. They've beaten 3 ranked teams toward the end of the season. Also, an LSU team that was ranked to begin the season. I mean, that's pretty good. This is a mature team. This is an older team. They've got a lot of seniors. Even the guys that are transfers are older, more experienced, more mature. And that's come to fruition week after week after week. They go on the road and they clean house at Tennessee and at Alabama. And then they come home. They beat Missouri. And then today, LSU. I mean, Two teams that they both had handicap offenses. They both had really good defenses, and it was one team that made 2 or 3 plays at the end on offense that saved the game and is going to push this team and Brent Venables' 4th team to the college football playoff.
Carson, it's kind of reminiscent offensively of last week, where at no point did Oklahoma ever really get any rushing game going. They finished with 88 yards on the ground. Torrey Blaylock, who looked as spry and as energetic as he had since he exited the Ole Miss game injured, he had like a 21-yarder, but for the most part, it's averages 2.7, stuff like that. But it's really 2 massive plays on the good side of things. First, exactly like last week, it wasn't 87 yards or whatever it was for Isaiah Satani, but it was Deion Burks, a pass at the line of scrimmage, essentially, that he was able to outrace everybody to the end zone, 45 yards, and then at the end of the game, I'm not sure that the LSU players or coaching staff is probably going to dwell on this too long. They're probably wondering, is Lane Kiffin coming, all this stuff. But if this were a big moment for LSU, they'd be going, how on earth did Isaiah Satania get that far, that wide open behind the Oklahoma defense? And in a weird way, for John Material said after the game, it was almost the best thing in the world that he had to throw it immediately, because if he had to think about it, it probably would have been bad. But for as inaccurate as he was all day long, a dot to Isaiah Satania so he could walk into the end zone, and that's all she wrote for the Oklahoma offense, at least.
Yeah, I feel like that does say a lot about the resolve that John Mateer has after he had been horrible for almost the entire game before that throw to Satania. Hitting him in stride, it's huge. Granted, not a hard pass to complete just with how open Satania was, but he did hit him in stride. In stride is in stride. So that was just a great play. I think that's what we talked about, kind of like that explosive Iowa, I think is how we put it last week. This team's just so dead on offense, but they have the capabilities to just produce these big plays. They have the speed. Saw some Jaron Kanek a little bit more than we have lately, so finding that I thought was good. And just, going back to the big plays, just so huge that this team is not great on offense. This team is not even good on offense, but they can explode when needed.
Yeah, it was the closest at times. Over this past month, you've gotten a John Mateer that you don't get the highest highs that you got the first month of the season that comes with being the gunslinger, but they've kind of stripped out the negative side of Gunslinger, right? Against both Alabama and Missouri, he threw a ball that probably should have been picked off. College kids play on both teams. Didn't happen. Today, the one that would classify there, I think, was his second interception. That was when he just stared at Jaron Kanek and said, I'm going to lock in and chuck it to you. The first one, a tipped ball. Okay, that sucks, but Peyton Bowen erases it. We'll get to that later. And the third one was just awful, lasered in on Javonte Gibson. And you look at it, though, Aber, 28-3 of 38, 3 interceptions, 318 through the air, 2 TDs. By the end of the game, you got some of that, but like what the stats will even show is the inaccurate balls in the first and second quarter. That's like he'd stand there and deliver on 3rd and 11 to Javonte Gibson. You're like, where the hell is that this whole time? Because he's missing reads, inaccurate, and then like he did against Auburn, like he did to a certain extent against Michigan, like he did a little bit in Knoxville, he just comes alive in the fourth quarter. It's the damnedest thing.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about the, sort of eliminating over the last few weeks the negative part of the gunslinger. We saw the negative part in vast periods of the game today. Not only the interceptions, the throws you mentioned, there were a couple more that had a chance to get picked off that didn't. Had LSU defensive backs with their head to their hands after missing a couple of those hand to their heads after missing a couple of those interception chances. But you also saw the really good side of the gunslinger mentality. The pass to Deion Burks, obviously the pass to Satania, but I thought the setup to that pass to Satania, getting going with Jaron Kanek over the middle, a 9-yard pass, I think, on first down. They come back on 2nd and 1, another, 16 yards, I think, there. And even before Satania finds himself alone in Norman amongst the Bayou Bengals, there was a sense that they were starting to turn a corner there with what they were able to do offensively, and that's just who John Mateer is. It wasn't beautiful by any stretch of the imagination, but I think, and we'll get into more of this I'm sure later, but I think we're going to find out how closely the committee watches the games, because really you look at the stat sheet, and Brent Venables sort of scoffed looking at the stat sheet after the game and said there wasn't a whole lot to talk about. The stat sheet outside of those 3 interceptions isn't horrifically awful. I mean, John Mateer had his second best passing stats of the season, behind only that opener against Illinois State. The offense had the most total yards that they've had since Temple. But it was so much feast or famine, where there was 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out, and then bam, a big play. And that's sort of what they've done the last couple of weeks. We talk about that big touchdown to Satania last week, obviously the big ones to Satania and Burks today. So there's a little bit of life over there. Certainly got to be better. But it was enough to get the job done today.
Yeah, and on the other side of the stat sheet, Oklahoma holds LSU to under 200 yards, 198, their lowest output.
I said 2019. It was actually 2018 against Alabama. that that LSU was last held to under 200 yards. So pretty incredible. LSU's offense isn't any good, but OU's defense was dominant today in a way that they really haven't been that dominant against an SEC opponent really since they entered the league.
Yeah, we'll hit all the defensive moments here. The Peyton Bowen interception that negated the first John Mateer interception. Basically, the only bad moment for the day for the defense was the 4-play, 33-yard drive after Mateer's second pick that LSU gets in the end zone on. And then after Mateer's third pick, they're able to just go 3 and out immediately and kind of erase that. But Brent Venables came in and obviously elated. First off, punch your ticket to the college football playoff. Essentially, it'll become official not tomorrow Sunday, but next Sunday in 8 days. The Sooners will hear their name called. They'll figure out if they're hosting, going on the road, all that stuff. But you could just tell he's ecstatic for not just getting Oklahoma back to the college football playoff. That's something he talked about. That the standards at Oklahoma, you have to do something for it to be a season worth talking about, much less just win 10 games or anything like that. But he talked about Brent Venables did coming in after the Ole Miss game. And this is so against Brent Venables, not character, I don't want to say that, but his style of coaching. But he said he could tell that guys were kind of down a little bit, and he's like, screw it. I'm going to put the ESPN college football playoff predictor up on the screen, and I'm going to click the box that says Oklahoma wins at Tennessee, and Oklahoma wins at Alabama, and Oklahoma wins against Missouri, and Oklahoma wins against LSU. And let's see what that looks like. He's like, well, I'll be darned. That's a 98% chance that you make the CFP. And I thought that we've talked so much, guys, about, what are these signs of growth for Brent Venables as the head coach at Oklahoma? And I think that we always joke behind the scenes that those meetings have to be long with Brent Venables. He wants to go over every single little thing. Is that something that maybe you tune the message out when you're sitting there for 25 minutes after practice?
He has an hourglass that he puts in,
yeah.
And then he blows a whistle to get the meeting started.
Yeah,
apparently everybody hates the whistle.
Which the whistle's going to stay after this. But I just thought that was maybe one of those moments where you peel the curtain back, and it's Brent Venables kind of recognizing that while he wants to do it this way, and as a defensive coordinator, I think you can be almost the hard ass, for lack of better terms, because it's Davos Sweeney's job or Bob Stoops' job or Bill Snyder's job to come in and say, run them harder, or to come in and say, no, I'm the head coach. That's your bad guy, good cop, bad cop type thing. I think that was maybe Brent Venables realizing, and not that he hasn't done this in the past 4 years, but it's one of those instances of what are the little things that you tweak? Because the character of this team, Brent Venables has not changed as a head coach, but there obviously have been little tweaks to get the message through to finish in these games and to have all that. And I thought that was just one moment of probably a seized of moments that these guys we wanted to point out, Aber, here over the next 3 weeks in this build-up to the college football playoff of why this year has been different.
Yeah, I think Brent Venables has shown an ability to adapt in that way, but it was showing, hey, this is what we can do if you look at the big picture and you stack things. But he immediately goes back, and I talked to a couple of the players after the game today about this, immediately goes back and say, hey, this is what happens when we focus on winning the day. And not just winning Saturdays and winning the games, winning Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays. And that's what this team has talked about consistently over this last month is that, hey, the success that we're having on the field on Saturdays is directly tied to the success that we're having in practice. And you brought up the whistle. And I thought it was a really telling story also that Brent Venables said they were, sort of getting on in a team meeting last night, Friday night, in the team hotel. The team was feeling a little bit loose, but they're trying to tie up a couple more sort of scenarios and, hey, this is what we do, win type of things. And they're zeroing in on a late 4th and 1, 4th and 2 situation. And, hey, here's what LSU is going to do, and here's what we're going to do. Blew the whistle, brought the team sort of back to that moment, and sure enough, there in the last minute, that's the situation that comes. Grayson Halton gets into the backfield, runs Michael Van Buren around. He tries to find Bauer Sharp, a familiar name, and Peyton Bowen is right there to, I thought at the time he got the interception, just knocked it down to give OU the ball back, but sort of use that moment to illustrate just how important those details were, and I think that certainly showed really throughout this stretch in November, but especially tonight.
It was kind of indicative too, guys. I thought of not just the Brent Venables. He talks about this has been something he's hammered all 4 years. We've heard it in all these press conferences, and you've heard it enough to hear too, Carson, that you know this. Brent Venables talks about you don't win the game on Saturday, you win it on Monday, you win it on Tuesday. That kind of thing. He believes Oklahoma won that game on Friday night in that moment. And I also thought it was kind of incredible that the two guys involved in that play, everyone's involved, but the two guys really involved. Grayson Halton, someone who doesn't maybe show up in the box score when you look at it and go, okay, Grayson Halton, 4 total tackles, 1 tackle for loss. Okay, he forced a fumble. I thought that Grayson Halton was all over the place.
I mean, the 2 quarterback hurries.
He's a
were
tone setter
massive.
too,
Yeah.
and on the second LSU field goal drive, he's the one that sniffed out the jet sweep and forced the fumble. And guys, I know I told Aber and Hoover this. I was like, I thought for a moment that Grayson was just going to scoop it up, and that was going to be like the scoop and score moment that got it done. Peyton Bowen, 6 total tackles. He had a couple of massive pass breakups. Obviously, the big interception immediately after John Mateer throws the interception. It's just kind of incredible how those two guys talk about that in that moment they popped up, which I thought was indicative of this whole game. And John, it's another game where Oklahoma's defense, you hurled them into John Mateer, not you, but Oklahoma throws them into all these situations, and the only time they really broke was that 4-play, 33-yard touchdown drive. After that, it's just over and over and over again. It's unbelievable, and I know we've talked about it this past month, this run that Oklahoma's been on. What Brent Venables has done just in 4 short years with this defense to go from a unit that is one of the worst in school history to one that can not single-handedly, because I think special teams plays a big role in it, but pretty much single-handedly power Oklahoma to the college football playoff. It's insane.
What's really truly insane is put yourself in the mindset, put yourself in the pants or the shoes or whatever of someone who has lived and breathed SEC football for the past 15 years, right? And here comes Oklahoma and here comes Texas. And they've been in the Big 12 where numbers are, 63 to 56 every week, right? And here comes these 2 Big 12 heavyweights. They're going to be playing big boy football now. Give me the 2 best defenses in the SEC in 2025, Oklahoma and probably Texas.
Yeah, but
that's incredible. In 4 years, Venables has done that to this defense. And where they were in 2018, where they had to fire their defensive coordinator halfway through the season, and the replacement, he didn't come back either. I mean, that's incredible. 4 or 5 years later, they're sitting here as the best defense in the conference, hands down, in my opinion.
yeah, I mean, and probably the best defense in the country, given who they played throughout the season. But it's crazy, you look at those 2 teams, and Texas' defense, especially their defensive line, you could tell that they were sort of SEC ready. You could make that argument that, hey, that's not going to translate and all that. Oklahoma wasn't a good defensive line for the Big 12, much less moving to the SEC. And the job that Brent Venables has done really from day one in building that depth, getting guys like R. Mason Thomas and Grayson Halton and some of those guys, and then transitioning to getting PJ Adebawore and David Stone and Jaden Jackson. It's just incredible the job that he has done in building the depth and the physicality of this defense. It started up front. I think you've got to give Todd Bates and Miguel Chavis a lot of credit, not only for the job they've done coaching, but the job that they've done recruiting, because we've seen a different level of development out of that group than we saw in the previous coaching staff.
Yeah,
I mean, you think about
I said it on the podcast last week about Bates, right? Bates is who's done a better job nationally than Todd Bates? He's got 4 defensive tackles who could be a first team All-American.
David Stone isn't starting, but is one of the best defensive linemen in the country.
Him and Grayson Halton were the ones on the field at the end of the game. Not just the end of the game, but the last few drives. I think those were the 2 interior tackles.
Yeah,
those
but
guys had a great
even
year.
beyond that, they have Jaden Jackson, who played a lot more tonight than he had the last few weeks. Obviously, Taylor Wine was great as well, and they're just showing that depth week in and week out, even without their best defensive lineman.
Real quick, Jaden Jackson, 19 snaps. David Stone, 28. Grayson Halton and Dominic Williams, 31 each. So those guys they ate up a lot of snaps in the first half.
It's been unbelievable. And Carson today, no Reggie Powers in the first half, who's been spectacular for Oklahoma, I think, in support of Kendall Downs. It hasn't really mattered much, especially when you look up and down the first half. And you go 1, 2, 3, 4 3-and-outs in the first half, forced by the Oklahoma defense. You throw in the Peyton Bowen interception. That's 5 drives where LSU ran 3 plays or less that either ended in a turnover or a punt. And it's just I'm quickly running out of words to describe this Oklahoma defense because we said it. You mentioned it perfectly. This is souped up Iowa. This is what hey, if the Iowa Hawkeyes could do this or that. Oklahoma's doing it, and they're doing it not against some of the schedules that Iowa has played in the Big Ten. They had to go to Neyland. They had to go to Tuscaloosa. They played Auburn before everything fell. It's been just to take this schedule, which was South Carolina as good as you thought it was going to be? No. Okay, fine. Was LSU as good as you thought they were going to be? No, fine. It's still probably the most talent faced up and down a schedule in Oklahoma to do this has been nothing short of spectacular.
It really has. I mean, it's funny because we really regurgitate a lot of the same stuff we've said about how many guys can plug and play, how physical this defense is, but it's always been valid except for pockets of the Ole Miss and Texas games. I mean, this defense has been phenomenal, even if LSU's offense isn't just a bunch of world beaters right now. Michael Van Buren is a shifty guy. I thought he showed flashes of his potential today. And OU's defense did excellent aside from one drive at neutralizing him. Their receiving core is very athletic. Barryon Brown, one of the better receivers in college football. Stats don't reflect that because of, well, how inept this LSU offense is. So, I mean, it was a different kind of impressive showing, but it was impressive nonetheless. That response, just Messier throws the pick, and then the first throw from Van Buren being a pick. I believe that was Peyton Bowen, right?
Yeah.
That was, I mean, it was just the quickest momentum shift you'll ever see.
Yeah.
And it just speaks to how good this defense and how timely this
And
defense
Mateer
is.
saved a touchdown.
Yes.
And yeah, how about this? Mateer had more tackles today than Kobe McKenzie did. But
And might have saved 2 touchdowns. That other one was going.
yeah, I mean, certainly the first one was massive, but was able to save a couple there. And going back to who sort of referenced the Pro Football Focus snap count numbers, how about this? 5 OU defenders had great PFF grades of 74.9 or higher, which if you're not familiar with the PFF grades, that's really impressive. And these weren't guys that just played a couple snaps. All of those guys played at least 31 snaps. This was a fantastic defensive performance, obviously led by Peyton Bowen, who was at 87.4, Grayson Halton at 83.3. How about Grayson Halton against the run, 90.6, which is just an incredible number that sort of illustrates the things that we've been talking about those two guys tonight.
And it's that side of the ball that is going to give Oklahoma fans hope. It's going to give Oklahoma fans everything that they need as far as when you get into the college football playoff. And
More than anything, it allows you to make mistakes. It builds a cushion for you to make mistakes and throw 3 interceptions and be able to say, which is 2 guys told me this in the postgame interviews. John Mateer's fine. We got his back. We're the Oklahoma defense.
And
Huge.
I think,
Enormous.
and I think it also, Hoove, I know we talked about this during the game. There's one play that it seemed like OU missed 3 tackles and still got the guy down for a 2-yard loss
Right.
because they were just in such good position.
Yeah.
And this defense swarms. They do all the things that, those of us who've been around this program for a long time have said, hey, this is what we saw back early in the Brent Venables, Mike Stoops days on defense, and they're doing it again now.
And it's whether you look up and down and the likely matchups, and there's still a lot to play for when it comes to SC Championship, Big Ten Championship. What's that all going to do for the seeding and the shifting? What is Lane Kiffin's decision? Plus, if he leaves, how does the committee do that? All that stuff. So there's a wide range of possibilities, especially in the first round, whether it's in Norman or not, which we'll get into. We'll probably get into that on Wednesday after we get a fresh batch of rankings. We can tell you everything the committee said. But you look up and down, like Ole Miss, Notre Dame, Alabama, that's probably the range of possibilities for a first-round game. I don't see them dropping to a spot where they'd have to play like an Oregon, but even there, you go there and you saw Oregon was in a dogfight today with Washington. That was kind of a cagey battle. That's an Oregon offense that, could they come out and have a really good day? Yeah, but I don't think that it's impossible for the Oklahoma defense to do what they've done to Tennessee's high-flying offense and Alabama's high-flying offense. And while Ole Miss came in here and you go, oh, what was that? Would they finish with 27 points? Is that what Ole Miss ended with? And that's the biggest total against Oklahoma all year?
34.
Or 34. Did they
yeah.
add the 34? You got that. It's like if Ole Miss came in today, Brent Venables talked about the things they didn't do well in that Ole Miss game. He feels like they've grown from that. I don't think Ole Miss is putting 34 points on the board. You look at it, and the question is all going to come back to this. For Oklahoma to go and do something crazy like win a national championship, the offense is going to have to get leaps and bounds better. When they inevitably lose in the college football playoff, if they lose, it will be because of the offense. It will be because of the offense. It's going to be, though, what can this offense do over the next 3 weeks to get you through a first-round game and then maybe get you into the next round and beyond? Because you've seen that there are highs, and this is an offense that can survive being just a rudderless ship for a quarter and then popping up and having 2 big explosive plays, things like that. But they cannot have the interceptions that John Mateer had against like an Ohio State and have a prayer or things like that. And the next thing's going to be, hey, over the next 3 weeks, guys, how healthy can Xavier Robinson get? Because we have seen it with our eyes. A healthy Xavier Robinson can paper over a lot just because he runs through trash, as Brent Venables says. How much healthier, or can Jake Michael get back? A guy that we referenced it earlier. He was in the hospital this week with an infection, Brent Venables said, after the game, so that Fabechi Wiwu can play guard again instead of center, even though he did an admirable job today, firing over at center, playing his first game at center since he was a high school senior. Wow. It becomes a, hey, can you reintegrate Deion Burks, a guy that has been largely missing from this offense? We've talked about he's been at times the victim of bad blocking on some of these bubble screens, and then at times he's been the one that can't block on that. He's able to get that 45-yard catch and run, and he talked about he had forgot what it feels like to be in the end zone today. Isaiah Satania, he's going to give you 2 great plays a game and 1 drop a game. That's cool, but you saw like Javonte Gibson. He popped up on a couple of big third downs today. Javonte Gibson looked as athletic in a game scenario, I think, today, as we've seen him maybe all year long. It becomes a, what can you do in this 3 weeks? Because I think you just have to live the highs and lows of Mateer. He made a couple bad reads again today when we're just talking about pull versus throw. Ben Arbuckle has to just get rid of that, and that's something that Brent Venables had said on some of the short yardage stuff. Take the tag off. If we're going to run the ball, just call a running play, stuff like that. That's
Things
stuff
looked cleaner today, didn't it?
Yeah.
That whole process.
It's just that is going to be the question. That's the $1 million question for Brent Venables and how far this Oklahoma team is going to go in December.
John Mateer, Ben Arbuckle, Emmett Jones, they have leaned on basically 4 or 5 receivers this entire season. Today it was 4 receivers who got all the snaps. A couple of guys got some at the bottom of the rotation, for situational stuff. Von Carrion got one, for instance. But it was basically those 2 guys plus Javonte Gibson, as you said, who had his best game. Was his best game 3 catches, 66 yards?
I don't think there's any doubt about it.
And
it was
then
his best
Jermichael
game.
Carter got 24 snaps. I don't know if he caught a pass, but that's something that. And then you involve Jaron Kanik again against a really good LSU defense that seems to know what they're doing. You get Jaron Kanik involved. He had his best game in a month, or certainly since mid-October. So there's some things to like about what you saw today. There's some things to not like about what you saw. John Mateer, in addition to the 3 interceptions, he was just generally inaccurate, and that's something that's got to improve. He's got to find guys that are open, and they'll have a couple of weeks now, 2.5, 3 weeks to work on this. But he's got to find guys that are open. He's got to get the ball to them on time. And that's something that we didn't see a lot of today.
Yeah, I think the recipe for them, the offense isn't going to magically, turn into, a Lincoln Riley offense overnight. But if they can minimize the big-time mistakes, minimize turnovers, and things like that put their defense in really bad positions, if they can at least show some explosiveness. It doesn't even have to be, the explosiveness we saw tonight with those couple plays, but show some explosiveness, ability to stretch the field. And then I think the other thing is they've got to be able to run the football with John Mateer to create some number situations and keep defenses honest a little bit, because even if they get some production from Xavier Robinson, from Torrey Blaylock, who showed some flashes tonight for the first time since South Carolina, really. They need John Mateer to be a piece of that running game. If they can do those 3 things, then they've got a chance against pretty much everybody because of how good that defense is.
Yeah, no, it definitely can. I mean, this defense, like we touched on, doesn't have to be a Lincoln Riley offense. It just has to be serviceable. It has to avoid the big miscues, and they had largely done that in the Missouri and the Alabama games. The offense was not awesome in either of those games, but they didn't have the costly miscues. And I think this could have been totally different if they were playing a team with a more competent offense, because even as good as this defense is, the good offenses are still going to score points. I mean, Bama only getting 21. They still have 3 touchdowns. I mean, it's going to happen. So I think that was fortunate that Matier had his most inaccurate night in a very long time against a very bad offense, one that doesn't have an identity, one that doesn't have the same starting quarterback. That definitely helped them out, but I mean, you look at if they play Notre Dame, Oregon, Bama again, whoever it might be in the first round of the playoff, it's got to get a lot better than it's been.
It's got to get better, but the good news is Oklahoma, they entered this week in position. If everything ended today, being the number 8 team in the country, you would host a college football playoff game. And all eyes, I guess, will be on the committee on Tuesday night to see this last little bit of shuffling before Conference Championship Weekend, which then gives us another round of shuffling and all that stuff. But one of the questions, and you've already seen it online from some of the talking heads, and I don't want to dive into all of them, and I get it, I roll as well, but it becomes Oklahoma's offense. Was it so bad against LSU that the eye test conversation takes over in the committee room, or are they going to take a step? First off, there's also a possibility that they weren't really watching the game super closely with all the chaos going on. Oregon and Washington were kind of in a close game, stuff like that. They just look back at the stats. Maybe all they remember in their head is, I remember seeing that big Deion Burks touchdown and the big Isaiah Satania touchdown. And
that John Matier sure can sling it. 318 yards, 2 touchdowns. Wow.
Maybe that's something that stands out in their head. But the other part of it, too, is I am really curious when they take the step back. It feels like week to week, the eye test becomes a placeholder for instance, for Oklahoma. It's like, we'll put them back here for the eye test. They've got Tennessee and Bama up next. And if they win those games, it'll take care of itself. Oklahoma jumps up. Oregon. Eye test was said a lot about Oregon while they were playing crap teams, basically. The crap teams on their schedule. They beat USC, look good doing it. Boom, they jump up. I really wonder, Aber, when the committee takes a step back, if they're just going to look at the totality of Oklahoma's resume and go, hey, we think this Alabama team is darn good. I know that Tennessee got rocked in the fourth quarter by Vanderbilt, but that was still a really, really good win. Oh my gosh, this Michigan team that was fighting with Ohio State early today, that's a team that Oklahoma beat and that they handled. I wonder if they take this step back and look at it and go, listen, we believe Notre Dame's a college football playoff team, and eye test be damned, when you put these two resumes together, it's no contest when you just look at the resumes.
Yeah, it isn't anything close. And Notre Dame has had some impressive wins. They're up big right now on Stanford as we speak, but their strength of schedule is nothing compared to what Oklahoma's is. When you talk about just the November stretch alone, obviously had that big win against Texas A&M, or the 1-point loss, against Texas A&M to start the season.
That is their big win.
Yeah, well, yeah, it is their big win. I mean, when you look at it, Purdue, Arkansas, Boise State, USC is their best win by far on their schedule, and it's just gonna come down to, does this committee value Oklahoma's defense enough? Do they value the strength of schedule? I actually went back after the game, looked at Rich Clark, the executive director of the playoff, what he had to say last week, and there's some stuff that's really good for the Sooners. You talk about looking at schedule strength and strength of record, things like that. And then he talked about the 12 factors statistically that they look at. Some of them are going to be really good for the Sooners, the defensive ones especially, the offensive ones not so much. So I think it's going to be fascinating to see what they say on Tuesday, because a lot of those things I think are going to be answered for us this week, outside of the Bama question and what happens with them in Georgia. But Notre Dame's going to be done, and that's the big one.
Ole Miss is done.
Ole Miss is done.
Oregon's done.
And we should know, obviously what happens there with Lane Kiffin. Oregon's done. So yes, there's some factors. Alabama and BYU being the major ones that could change it. But we're going to get a lot of answers Tuesday, 5 days before we get the final answer.
Yeah, I think it's worth revisiting that the selection committee does some weird stuff sometimes and makes no sense to the rest of us, and they justify it however they want to. Hey, we looked at the eye test, and we were really impressed. This team over here has been in game control all year. They come up with these different, metrics that they say they use.
Yeah,
and the skeptics are always like, we know you want high TV ratings. We know you want big audiences, right? Notre Dame and Alabama and so on and so forth.
Well, let's be honest. Oklahoma, Notre Dame,
it's going to be huge.
Would be a massive playoff coup. You would imagine that would be a Friday night game.
What I'm saying is, don't be surprised if somebody comes out, if they drop Oklahoma and come out and they say, the way they played that game defensively was admirable. They've got a wonderful defense, but that offense really makes them hesitant, makes us hesitant to pick them very high. They say stuff like that. Like a team is a team, and they say things like, this is not a complete team. They just have a good defense and their offense struggles. And they're going to penalize, at some point, Oklahoma for that.
Yeah,
I said, they do flaky things.
Heck, you just look at the arguments for Notre Dame the last couple of weeks. A couple weeks ago, they said, well, the reason that Notre Dame is ahead of Miami, they weren't in the same grouping, and that's the reason given why Notre Dame is in the spot that it is. And then they come out last week and say they were in the same grouping, and Notre Dame is still ahead. So it's just fascinating to see some of the justifications. I think there's a lot that's good about this committee approach and the way that they've done it, as far as revisiting some of the things that have been staples of rankings for decades. But like Hoover said, there is some sort of fitting the argument to justify what your ranking is, rather than having this set set of standards that applies across the board, and then fitting your rankings inside of that standard.
Here's some of the good news that it's not been updated since today's games happened, but if you just sift through ESPN's game control metric, which game control is the one that I think is the hardest one to get our hands around, but is one that is like outsized in how the committee views things. But you look at it, Oklahoma coming in today, 7th in game control still. Texas A&M behind Oklahoma, so it shows you Notre Dame, are they ahead of Oklahoma? Yeah, but Miami's also ahead of Oklahoma. Notre Dame was 5th in game control. Miami not making the playoff, they're 6th in game control. Or one of those two teams is going to knock out the other in the eyes of the committee. So it's a situation where I think Oklahoma's underlying metrics just have to be good enough because to host. To be in, they're in. But to host, I think they just have to be good enough, and that's where things are going to take over, where the committee does point out that they have talked about that in a weird way, though John Mateer played. I don't think Oklahoma gets full loss credit for the Texas game because John Mateer played in that game, Carson. But they do get this, hey, an asterisk. We know that was 17 days after John Mateer's surgery. It needs to be a conversation today that Oklahoma's center out. Xavier Robinson, in a weird way, guys, I was talking to maybe Tom or you after the game, Aber, that Carson, if they had just ruled out Xavier Robinson today, Xavier Robinson, 6 touches, 10 yards, gained 9 yards, 9 net yards after. If they had just said Xavier Robinson out for today, I think that actually would have been more beneficial to Oklahoma, because maybe that's a talking point in the committee room when you talk about hosting, that no center, no Xavier Robinson, everybody's banged up. This is the weird stuff we get into when we start parsing through host, not host, all that stuff.
Yeah, I don't know if that's something the committee would value, but I mean, it is another player that could have been ruled the star running back, even if he isn't technically a, quote, star running back. I mean, it is maybe something they'd value. I have no idea if they get that deep into the weeds with X Robinson versus Torrey Blaylock versus who else could be the running back for OU. No one has been a Doak Walker finalist for this OU team this year, so I mean, I think maybe they view that, but I don't think it would be too substantial. So yeah,
I have a little quick addendum to our discussion about the college football playoff. According to ESPN's playoff predictor,
Let's do it.
Brent Venables' favorite website.
Yes, Brent Venables' new favorite website. Oklahoma's chances to make the college football playoff right now, after all of today's games, 99%.
That's
playoff.
Greater than 99%.
It does
At
say
least-
greater than 99%. Yeah, Brent.
If
I
yours
think Brent
says the
was
same
referencing
thing.
92%. Right?
Yeah, well, I think he said 94%.
94. Okay,
Yeah.
so first round bye 8%. That's not going to happen. But to host a first round game, 88% chance. That's according to ESPN's playoff predictor for whatever that's worth.
It'll be high drama on Tuesday, a lot of eyes on Notre Dame. It'll be high drama on Selection Sunday. I still think that even with everything, maybe Notre Dame goes out there and puts 50 on the board in the second half, in addition to the 28 they already have. But
They have 35, by the way.
they have 35. Okay, maybe they put 50 more. I think that when you look at this LSU team versus that Stanford team, things like that. Last week to me was the week. If Oklahoma was going to get killed for their offense, it was going to be in a very lackluster showing against Missouri when Notre Dame did everything they could to absolutely smoke a really bad Syracuse team. I don't know if that's going to happen.
But if you keep stacking those days, though,
yeah, I think
keep
this is
stacking
where
bad days for your offense, pretty soon they starts wearing them out.
well, that's where we get into kind of circling all the way back to what Ryan was talking about at the start is, are they going to dissect, wow, John Mateer really missed that pass in the first half, or are they going to look down and go,
You're right.
he had 318 yards, and the interceptions were bad, they were, but man, did you see Deion Burks outrun it? Like, are they going to get into the stat breakdown, or did they, like, watch the first half of this football game and remember the first half while they're also having Oregon and washing up, while they also are thinking, hey, the Iron Bowl's tonight. That's going to be fun, right? Hey, what's for lunch? Did I put my hat on the coat rack at the door? Did I leave my hat at the door? Oh, no, what's going to happen, Ryan?
Yeah, this is going to be one that I think you have to have paid really close attention to ding the Sooners for the offensive side. Even though, again, the interceptions are on the stat sheet, we all know that. But
Season high in yards in an SEC game.
yeah,
398 or something like that.
Yeah, season high in yards since the Temple game. For John Mateer, the highest passing since Illinois State.
Yep.
So the explosive plays with Isaiah Satania, with Deion Burks, those went out. But clearly Notre Dame is going into this game that they're playing still as we speak here at halftime, wanting to prove a point. They ran a fake punt. Up 2 touchdowns early in the game from their own 16 and got an 84-yard touchdown out of it, I believe, and then scored another touchdown in the last seconds, 17 seconds left before half to go up 35-3. Clearly they went into that game last week with wanting to make a point, and they're doing it again this week.
And I think it matters a great deal. I think that whether he's going to admit to it or not, I think that Marcus Freeman has looked up and gone, hey, well, we have a...
And, of course, for Notre Dame, it's not just about hosting a playoff
They're
game.
trying
it's
to keep
also
their spot.
Being in the playoff.
They're trying to keep their spot, but I think that they prepared for Syracuse and Stanford, so they've had some extra time to throw some stuff around the office that I think that Brent Venables maybe hasn't. And TJ Carr, I know he's played all year long, but this is one of those things where Matt Leinart can tweet whatever he wants, Danny Kanell can tweet whatever he wants about, Oklahoma is a free playoff win. You ask any coach.
Danny Kanell saying something negative about the Sooners? What?
Well, I can't believe that Nelly McEnroe Marinas would celebrate a home run. The agony. You ask any coach who has playoff hopes, especially one with a freshman quarterback, and say, do you want Brent Venables to have 2 weeks to prepare for your offense? Yeah. And oh, by the way, do you want to go on the road and have a rowdy Oklahoma crowd that's going to be cranked up to levels that we haven't seen since maybe the Michigan game here as far as night game? Because guess what? If Phillies hosted,
well,
I
think we go back to the last time Notre Dame was here for the energy that would be in the stadium for that one.
It would be a scenario where you ask these coaches how they feel about this Oklahoma defense. Oklahoma's shown if they have to go on the road, and this is something Brent Venables was something I appreciate so much. He's a coach that he lets the record do the talking. He's not going to Steve Sarkisian this bad boy up. Be like, well, we played Ohio State, and because we lost to Florida, pay no attention to the Florida game. Let's go over here, and that's why Texas is what they are compared to the rest of the Blue Bloods. That attitude right there. You beat OU, you beat A&M, and you're bitching about Ohio State. That's why you have fewer national championships than all the other Blue Bloods. Book it. But Brent Venables is like, yeah, man, if we had just, won all of our games, then we would do whatever. You can send us wherever. I just want an invitation into the dance. And I think that attitude is going to roll through this football team. But if Oklahoma gets a Notre Dame here on Owen Field or anything like that, I would not want to be the Irish rolling into that. And then we can really set off and have some fun stuff. All of that, though, possibilities, guys, as we wind down here, because Oklahoma was able to borrow from college basketball, survive and advance today here in Norman.
Yeah, it was a gutty performance by the offense. Certainly the defense, I liken them to a giant wall, and they just keep, repelling. They just keep firing stuff at this wall, and it's not going through, guys. It's made out of bricks. It's made out of stone and mortar. It's not going through. That's what the defense is like. The offense, gutty, gritty, grimy. Brent Venables' favorite words.
You said a brick wall. I've used two things to describe this defense. Coming out of the Tennessee game, when Kobe McKenzie not able to go, I said it's like whack-a-mole. Kobe McKenzie's out, and suddenly Owen Heineke pops up, and you're like, what the hell's going on here? R. Mason Thomas is out. Guess what? Taylor Wine's just going to continue to ascend. Jaden Jackson's been halted. Throw Marcus Strong in for a couple of snaps. Who cares? And it's gone from whack-a-mole to, as I told Aber, it's now Flex Seal. Brent Venables is like, I built this boat with a screen door. Seth Luttrell, John Mateer's injury. Let me just spray this down, and we're out here.
Walk-on lacrosse player.
Just slap it on.
Sealed.
That's what this defense feels like to me,
Alex
Carson.
Grinch handed him a screen door, and look what he's made.
Yeah, no,
A guy who struggled at OSU last year. Bam.
Yeah, exactly.
no,
He's
it
gonna
is-
be-
it is. It's ridiculous at this point. I mean, you see guys like Michael Boganowski tonight. I thought he was fantastic. I mean, he's come along this year. Guys that we weren't so sure of before the year, like David Stone, PJ. I mean, there were a lot of like, okay, is this player ever going to live up to his potential? And pretty much all of them have. I think that's another remarkable part. Danny Okoye with that big tackle late in the game. I think he might be what we're seeing from Taylor Wine this year, next year. If I had to pick it right now, I think he's going to be a stud. I mean, they've talked so much about his freak athleticism, his drive, and I've been impressed with what I've seen so far. So it really is plug and play for this defense.
Yeah, just phenomenal to see, going up at Jacoby Johnson, another one of those guys who has taken a significant step after playing a, decent, significant role last year, but, struggled at times. He's been really good, was solid tonight, and just up and down the lineup, the way that they're able to, like you said, plug and play guys has been phenomenal. But those top flight guys, I mean, you've got to really start with the Bowen brothers, a job that they've done. If you're talking about outside of that defensive line, it's just been incredible. And like you said, Ryan, there is no coach who's going to want to have to go up against, no offensive coordinator who's going to want to have to go up against a Brent Venables defense that has 2 weeks to prepare, 2 weeks to figure out new wrinkles, which is what Brent Venables does. We've seen it, week in and week out during this crazy November run, that they've been able to do that on the fly. And, when they're given some more time, certainly will be, a consideration. And you've got to think that, we say 2 weeks. Brent Venables is probably, down there right now in his office looking at Notre Dame, figuring out, hey, what can we do here? Looking at BYU, what can we do here? Looking at some of these other teams, and starting to get some ideas through his head.
I bet Brent Venables right now is probably where I'm going to be in like an hour, which is a Taco Bell drive-through. That's how we know he celebrates the big wins with the
Gus
with
Malzahn
his daughters
had
and the
Waffle
family.
House.
Yeah,
Brent Venables has Taco Bell.
no, it's we know that it's not going to go regardless of what happens here. College football playoff and beyond, not going anywhere. Oklahoma picks up another commitment. Head to the website OklahomaSooners.si.com. We have everything there. Carson did a fantastic job having that ready to rock and roll. Took him almost an hour after the game because he was deservedly so celebrating and also getting right on the recruiting horse back again. We'll talk to Brent Venables this week for signing day on Wednesday at some point. Then we'll get into all the playoff prep and all that fun stuff. But be sure you head to the website, OklahomaSooners.si.com. Aber wrote about just the emotional release for these guys as they make it to the college football playoff, as well as Brent Venables adopting the ESPN CFP playoff predictor. And if you want the metrics tomorrow morning, Sunday morning, if you're listening to this back on Sunday, Aber's going to have all the metrics, all that fun stuff about who's hosting, where does everyone stand, all that. I wrote about the defense. Carson's got great story on Isaiah Satania and Deion Burks and the difference that they've made. Hoover wrote the big column about John Mateer and how all of us at the same time we're all going, Hawkins, yes, and Brent Venables and Ben Arbuckle are like, no, and Kip Lewis goes up to John Mateer, going into the fourth quarter and says, you fix this, basically.
As he's drilling a hole in John Mateer's chest.
And
quite a story.
Hoove has all of that there at the website, Oklahoma Sooners on SI.com. It's impossible to encapsulate all of this. We're all going to go home, probably watch another couple times. We'll be back on Wednesday after we have college football playoff rankings in hand, have a much clearer picture about, is Oklahoma basically wrapped up a hosting spot, just waiting to see. We'll talk signing day, all that fun stuff. And as always, all throughout Sunday, all over the place. Way more content coming to the website, Oklahoma Sooners on SI.com. Be there, be square. Who, before we get out of here, anything else? Have I missed anything?
12 games. It's been a unique season for me, obviously. I'm glad I was able to get to this one. I got to the Michigan game and this one at home, and then the Texas game and the Alabama game. So a unique season for me. Didn't get to every game. Broke my streak. Broke my heart to break my streak, but boy, I'm lucky to have been here tonight. Another great season, man. This one, I mean, we've seen this team go under Brent. We've seen them go 6-6. This one's 10-2. It was a lot of fun to watch this team.
And Hoover, I just want to say before we get done, a streak ended for me as well this year. Not being on the road or even at the Michigan game early in the season, but this season has been incredibly fun and sort of reinvigorating because of this group right here and working with y'all day in and day out. And I thank you for that.
Love to hear that.
Well, Hoove puts a damn good team together. And here's the good news. The team's going to hit the road wherever it takes it, whether that road is to, like, here in Norman, we're just going to all kind of, like, meander through, whether we're all headed to Chicago or wherever. We'll be, as many people as they'll let us squeeze into that press box, we're going to be squeezing because as this thing goes, now's not the time to step off the gas, and we certainly won't be here. We're so thankful for everyone who has clicked at any point this year. If you've listened to a podcast, if you've watched a video, your support, it means everything. It's why we get to keep doing this, and it's why we're going to be able to keep doing this through the College Football Playoff. Please don't go anywhere. We'll be covering this team all the way through. It should be a ton of fun, and like I said, that starts website-wise, continues, I guess, on Sunday, Oklahoma Sooners on SI.com. That's the place to be. We'll be back podcast Wednesday after all the signing day stuff, and we're not going to miss a beat here as we carry this thing on, rolling through the College Football Playoff. For the first time in this 12-team format, it'll be a little bit new for us, new for you guys, but it should be a ton of fun nonetheless. But big thank you to all of you, the loyal listener, for everything you do. Big thank you to Who for just allowing us to continue to piddle putts around here. Thanks to Carson for just powering through on the field, doing everything that he does. The most versatile guy on the OU beat is Carson Field. And for Aber for just like putting up with me next. Aber now knows. He's like, I've been across the press box from Ryan. I now know why I don't like sitting right next to Ryan because he's ADHD and all that stuff. But good enough.
I can't say anything about that.
Yeah, well, we also make a mess. Our Chick-fil-A's all over the almost cuss. Our Chick-fil-A's all over the place, all over our laptops, all that fun stuff. All right, it is, what time is it, boys?
11:34.
11:34. Let's wrap this bad boy up. Let's get out of here. Sooners 17, the Bayou Bengals 13. Oklahoma headed back to the College Football Playoff where this program belongs, and Brent Venables is the one that took them there. Can't wait to keep following along. But for Who, for Carson, for Aber, Brian Chapman, thanks a lot. We'll talk to you guys here on the Sooners on the Side podcast next Wednesday. See ya.